At Thanksgiving, Aunt laughed, "You're the dropout," then went quiet when the dean called me professor in front of her. I actually choked on my mashed potatoes. The timing was ridiculous. 1 second Aunt Lisa was cackling loud enough for the entire faculty club dining room to hear, her bony hand squeezing my shoulder like she was in on some hilarious private joke. The next second, there was a shadow at the head of the table and a warm voice going, "Happy Thanksgiving, Professor Carter. I'm glad you could make it this year." The fork froze halfway to my mouth. I could feel gravy cooling on my tongue while Lisa's fingers slowly uncurled from my shoulder, like she'd just realized she'd grabbed a hot pan. It was a university Thanksgiving thing, one of those bring your family to the faculty club buffets they do because half the staff are transplants and not everyone has somewhere to go. It was a Thursday afternoon, the room buzzing with clinking glasses and the weirdly formal sound of academic small talk mixed with kids running under tables. I'd brought my parents and, for my sins, my Aunt Lisa because my mom said, "It'll mean a lot to her to see where you work now." I was wearing the one blazer I owned that didn't have cat hair on it and trying very hard to blend into the beige wallpaper. And then in walks Dean Patel, all smiles and cranberry sauce on his plate, calling me professor like it was the most normal thing in the world, while my aunt's last word was still echoing over the table. Dropout. Aunt Lisa's laugh died in her throat. I watched her mouth close, her eyes flick from the dean to me, then back like she was trying to recalculate the entire story she'd been telling herself about me for the last 10 years. "Professor?" she repeated faintly, as if maybe she'd misheard. Dean Patel, bless him, mistook her shock for pride. "You must be family," he said warmly, sticking out his hand. "We're very lucky to have your niece. Students love her. She's one of our best." Lisa's hand twitched toward his automatically, social reflex beating out confusion. "Oh yes, well," she stammered. "We're very proud." I nearly dropped my fork. For context, I'm 32F. I teach psychology at a mid-sized state university. Officially assistant professor. Unofficially, the one who always has snacks and colored pens. It's not Harvard. I'm not changing the world with groundbreaking research, but I worked my ass off to get here. And for most of my life, if you listen to Aunt Lisa, I was the family disappointment. Lisa is my mom's older sister. She's one of those women who treats success like a competitive sport and other people's life choices as personal insults. She went straight from a fancy private high school to an elite college on the coast, married a guy with a strong jawline and a stronger 401k, and now lives in a house with white carpets and a kitchen island the size of my first apartment. Her kids grew up in matching outfits, playing soccer and violin and going to enrichment camps in the summer. Meanwhile, we were the normal side of the family. My parents are both teachers, dad in middle school science, mom in third grade reading. We lived in a modest little ranch with peeling paint and a perpetually dying lawn. I shared a room with my sister until she moved out. Our idea of enrichment was my dad sneaking us into the planetarium show for free. Lisa loved to compare. At every holiday, "Oh, Emma's taking AP Calculus already. Aren't you, honey? What about you, Katie? Oh no? Well, everyone has their strengths. Ethan just got into Columbia. We're over the moon. Where are you applying? You're thinking about a gap year? Those can be tricky. People lose momentum. I just don't want you to waste your potential." When I got into college, a solid state school, nothing wild, my parents cried with happiness. Lisa smiled and said, "Congrats. Just remember it's 4 years. You have to finish. No dropping out to find yourself. Okay?" At 18, I laughed it off. Of course I'd finish. I'd always been the smart kid. Straight as honors classes, the one teachers used as the example when they said, "If Katie can get this, the rest of you can too." My anxiety started whispering louder in my chest around then, but I brushed it aside because overachievers soldier on, right? Except college hit me like a truck. Nobody warns you that being the smart kid in a small pond does not prepare you for being average in an ocean. My state school wasn't even particularly competitive, but suddenly everyone in my intro classes had also been their high school's golden child. The volume of work felt impossible. My perfectionism, which had always been a helpful little gremlin, turned into this monstrous thing sitting on my chest at night, telling me if I didn't get an A on this next paper, my entire life would collapse. First semester, I started having panic attacks. Not cute, I'm stressed meltdowns. Full, heart-pounding, hands numb, can't breathe episodes in the communal bathroom at 2 a.m. I'd sit on the cold tile with my head between my knees, trying to remember the grounding exercises the campus counselor had shown me. 5 things you can see. 4 things you can touch. 3 you can hear. 2 you can smell. 1 you can taste. All I could usually taste was stale coffee and fear. I told my parents. They tried to help, tried to talk me into seeing someone more regularly. My mom sent care packages with lavender tea and notes that said things like, "We love you no matter what the grades look like, but college is its own little world. And in that world, your GPA is your worth." I made it through freshman year by the skin of my teeth. Sophomore year, everything cracked. It was a miserable February, all slush and gray sky. I'd signed up for too many credits because some advisor had waved a 4-year graduation plan in my face and I'd panicked. I was working part-time in the library to help cover my portion of the fees, barely sleeping, living on vending machine snacks. One night, around 3 in the morning, I was sitting in the computer lab trying to finish a stats assignment when my vision started to blur. I remember staring at the screen and realizing I hadn't really seen any of the words in the last half hour. The thought popped into my head, clear as day, I can't do this. Not this assignment. Not this semester. This as in the whole thing. The 4-year plan, the expectations, the endless treadmill. The next morning, I went to the registrar's office and asked about taking a leave of absence. The woman behind the desk handed me a form like it was no big deal. "Lots of students take a break," she said. "You can come back within a year without reapplying." I called my parents that afternoon and cried so hard my dad had to take the phone because my mom started crying too. They came up that weekend with a borrowed pickup truck. We packed my dorm room into boxes that smelled like dust and broken dreams, and I moved back into my childhood bedroom with the posters still on the wall. Lisa's reaction was not tears. She called the house 2 days after I got back. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table in my pajamas at 11 a.m., staring at a bowl of cereal going soggy. Mom put her hand over the receiver and mouthed, "It's Lisa. Put her on," I said, throat tight. "So," Lisa said, skipping hello, "I hear you've decided to drop out." "I'm taking a leave," I said, "for my mental health." She snorted. "Oh, sweetie, we all get stressed in college. You can't just quit when things get hard. That's not how life works." I stared at the avocado green countertop so I wouldn't cry. "I'm not quitting," I said. "I just need time." "You kids and your time," she said. "If Emma tried this, I'd tell her absolutely not. She'd be ruining her future. But, well, it's your life, I guess. Just don't expect the world to wait around for you while you find yourself." When we hung up, I went upstairs and buried my face in my pillow and screamed. The thing is, part of me agreed with her. That's the worst part. Anxiety is great at weaponizing other people's criticism. For the next few months, every time I ran into someone from high school at the grocery store and they asked, "So, how's college?" I wanted to shrink into the floor. I worked at a coffee shop, went to therapy, and tried not to have a full breakdown every time someone my age posted photos in matching graduation gowns on Instagram. I did go back. Not to the same school and not on the original timeline, but I went back. Community college first, just 1 class, then 2. Then transferring to a smaller university that had an actual support system. Therapy helped. Medication helped. Learning that my worth was not, in fact, solely tied to my grades helped. It was in a community college Psych 101 class that something clicked for me. The professor was this middle-aged woman with wild gray hair and a laugh that filled the room. She talked about cognitive distortions, black and white thinking, catastrophizing, all the stuff my brain did on autopilot, and for the first time I felt seen, not broken, just a human with a brain doing weird protective things. After class, I hung back and asked her about her job. Did she like teaching? How had she gotten there? She smiled and said, "Oh, honey, I was a mess in my 20s. Dropped out twice. Took me 10 years to finish my bachelor's. But the path isn't the point. The point is what you do when you're on it. I went home that night and Googled how to become a psychology professor, like it was a roadmap and not a years-long grind. It seemed impossible. Finish my bachelor's. Get into a grad program. Survive a master's, then a PhD. Publish. Teach. All while keeping my mental health in one piece. But the idea lodged in my chest and would not leave. It took me 3 more years to finish my undergrad. I worked part-time, took summers off when I needed to, let go of the idea that I had to do it on schedule. I graduated at 26, a full 4 years after I was supposed to. My parents came. Dad cried again. Mom hugged me so hard my ribs hurt. Lisa sent a text that said, "Congrats, kiddo." Better late than never winking face, which I chose to interpret as her version of a compliment. Getting into grad school was another gauntlet. Rejections, waitlists, imposter syndrome so loud I almost didn't accept the offer when it finally came. But I did. I moved to a new city with too much rain and not enough sunlight, shared a crappy apartment with 2 other grad students and a colony of mysterious ants, and threw myself into research on anxiety and academic pressure. Lisa, by this point, had mostly filed me under perpetual student. At family events she'd say things like, "Still in school? Huh? You must really love homework." With this tight smile, her kids, Emma and Ethan, were busy posting about their consulting jobs and engagements. There was a Christmas where she cornered me by the dessert table and said, "Your cousin's already a senior manager and you're doing another degree? What exactly is the plan?" "To teach," I said, "at a university." She snorted. "Don't you have to be, like, a real academic for that?" "I am a real academic," I said quietly. She waved a manicured hand. "You know what I mean." I knew exactly what she meant. In her world, prestige is linear, elite school, name-brand career, obvious markers of status. My path was messy, sideways. It didn't fit her narrative, so she dismissed it. Fast forward to this year. I defended my dissertation in the spring. The day my committee said, "Congratulations, dear Carter," I cried harder than I'd cried the day I left college the first time. It felt like closing a loop my younger self never thought she'd get to close. A month later, my department head called and said the magic words, "We'd like to offer you a position as an assistant professor. It's not tenure yet. It's a 3-year contract with a heavy teaching load and a salary that made my aunt raise her eyebrows when she heard the number and say, 'Oh, I thought professors made more, but it's mine.'" My name on the office door, my syllabi, my students filling out evaluations with little comments like, "She really cares," and "I felt less crazy after this class." When the invitation for the Thanksgiving faculty club thing hit my inbox, I almost deleted it. My instinct with my family and my career has always been to keep them separate. But my mom saw it when she was helping me set up my new apartment and said, "Oh, honey, we'd love to see the campus. Do they really feed us? For free?" She asked if we could invite Lisa too. "You know how she is," Mom said. "She'll be hurt if she thinks we left her out. And maybe it would be good for her to see how far you've come." I laughed. "You talk like she's capable of changing her mind." Mom shrugged. "People surprise you." So I sent the invite, which is how we ended up at a big round table in the faculty club dining room, surrounded by people in tweed jackets and sweaters with elbow patches, the smell of turkey and gravy in the air. My dad was on his second plate, eyes shining like a little boy in a candy store every time a distinguished-looking professor walked by. My mom kept whispering, "Look at these napkins. Cloth napkins." Like we'd been allowed into a royal palace. Lisa showed up late, breezing in with a scarf that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget and a bottle of wine, for the host, that she made sure everyone saw. She kissed my cheek and said, "So this is where you live now, huh? Very academic." "It's just the faculty club," I said. "I don't actually live here." She laughed like I'd made a joke. We'd gotten our food and sat down. I was halfway through explaining to my dad what assistant professor means when Lisa leaned over and, in that too loud voice she uses when she's had a drink, said, You know, I still can't believe you're the one who ended up here. Weren't you the one who dropped out? She meant it as a joke. I know she did. The family story, the one she trots out at gatherings, has always been, remember when Katie dropped out of college? Followed by a chuckle, like it's a funny anecdote about adolescent rebellion and not, a mental health crisis. But the word hit me harder than usual that day. Maybe because I was sitting in a place I'd once thought was permanently closed to me. Maybe because my mom had just squeezed my hand under the table, pride practically radiating off her. "You're the dropout," Lisa repeated, laughing. And that's when Dean Patel appeared like some kind of academic fairy godmother. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone," he said, putting a hand on the back of my chair. "I hope Katie's not boring you with grating horror stories." He turned to me. "Professor Carter, you survived midterms, I see." I swear to God. I felt Lisa physically jolt. "Professor?" she echoed. "Yes," he said. "Katie joined us this fall. We're very lucky to have her." He stuck his hand out. "And you are?" "Her aunt," she said weakly. He shook her hand, then turned to my parents. "You must be her mom and dad," he said. "She's doing great work. Students adore her. My daughter's in her section and talks about her all the time." My dad looked like he might actually float off his chair. "She's always been a hard worker," he said, voice thick. "My mom was doing that thing where she tried to look normal while also blinking way too much." "We're very proud," she managed. I wanted to sink under the table and also stand on it screaming. "Do you see me now?" My cheeks were on fire. I could feel Lisa's eyes on the side of my face, like she was studying a painting she didn't remember hanging. After the dean moved on, he had several tables to schmooze. It's his superpower. There was a weird silence. The clink and chatter from other tables filled it. My sister, who had been quietly buttering a roll, looked at me and raised her eyebrows in a silent well. That was something. Lisa was the one who finally broke it. "So," she said too brightly, "you're a real professor?" I stabbed a piece of turkey I didn't actually want to eat. "Assistant professor," I said. "But yeah, that's the title." "Huh," she said. It was such a small sound, but it carried a lifetime of recalibration. "You knew that," my mom blurted. "I told you when she got the job." Lisa waved her fork. "You said she got a job at the university," she said. "I thought you meant like admin. I didn't realize she was faculty." There was that word again, real. As if admin work isn't real. As if my job didn't count until a dean said the title out loud. "I teach," I said. "Research a bit. Have my own classes. It's a thing." She took a sip of wine. "Well," she said slowly, "good for you." It sounded like the phrase hurt on the way out. We didn't have a big confrontation at the table. I didn't give some epic speech about how calling me a dropout had hurt me for years. I just kept eating my increasingly flavorless mashed potatoes and answering my dad's excited questions about office hours and sabbaticals. But later, when we were all standing in the lobby waiting for the valet to bring Lisa's car around, she pulled me aside. "I didn't realize," she said quietly. "Realize what?" I asked. "That you'd made it back," she said, eyes flicking up to the portraits of old deans on the wall. "After, dropping out," I supplied. She winced. "I shouldn't have said that," she said. "Back then. Or just now." I shrugged, default defense mechanism. "It's fine." "It's not fine," she said. I thought you were wasting your potential. I didn't want you to end up stuck." "I was stuck," I said. "Stuck in a panic attack 90% of the time. Leaving was the only thing that kept me from breaking completely." She looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I don't really get anxiety," she admitted. "We didn't have that when I was your age." "Yes, you did," I said, a little sharper than I meant. "You just had it alone." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once in her life, she didn't have a snappy comeback. "I'm glad you figured it out," she said finally. "Even if I was wrong about how." It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was more acknowledgement than I'd ever gotten from her before. On the way home, in my little beat-up Corolla while my parents rode with Lisa in her fancy SUV. I thought about how much that one word dropout had shaped the last decade of my life. How many nights I'd lain awake replaying it, feeling like I'd failed some invisible test. How deeply it had intertwined with my anxiety, confirming my worst fear that I was fundamentally broken and everyone could see it. Being called professor in front of her felt like something out of a movie, and part of me feels gross even admitting how satisfying it was. I know intellectually that my worth isn't tied to a title or whether my aunt respects me. My therapist would be very proud of that sentence. But there was still something healing about watching her face when the dean said it, about seeing her forced, just for a second, to update the file she had on me in her head. I don't know if it'll change anything long-term. Lisa is still Lisa. At Christmas, she'll probably brag about her kids' promotions and make some passive-aggressive comment about how I should publish more if I ever want tenure. My anxiety isn't cured because a man in a blazer used a fancy word. But tonight, sitting on my couch with my cat snoring into my leg and my laptop open to a stack of student essays, I keep thinking about my 19-year-old self, the one who packed her dorm room into cardboard boxes while her aunt's voice played on a loop in her head. You're the dropout. The one who felt like she'd just permanently stepped out of the line that led to any kind of respectable future. I wish I could go back and sit with her on that narrow dorm bed and say, hey, it's going to take longer and it's going to hurt, and people who are supposed to love you are going to make it harder than it needs to be. But one day, you're going to sit at a table with a plate of mashed potatoes and someone's going to call you professor in front of the aunt who wrote you off. And more importantly, you're going to know that even if he never said it, you'd still be enough. For now, I'm just going to let myself enjoy the petty little satisfaction of that moment. Of watching Aunt Lisa's laugh die on her lips. Of hearing my dad tell anyone who would listen, "Our Katie? Oh, she's the professor now." Maybe that's not the most enlightened reaction. Maybe it is a little dramatic. But after a decade of being the dropout, I think I'm allowed a bit of drama.